It's gonna be a different year. This is not the place for fear. I've got a job to do.
You guys can see the scoreboard behind me. All right, and you can see that on Friday, the points, instead of going in the positive direction, they kind of went in the negative direction. It was the end of our first week back, and we had several people that struggled with following school rules. So I took a lot of points away from almost every house in my homeroom because they were not able to act with integrity on Friday while I was going around and checking in with the other classrooms. So that's where we're at right now on their scoreboard. Okay, so Ravenclaw is still in the lead. So Hufflepuff, Gryffindor, and Slytherin, you guys have a lot of work to do to catch up now. All right, we're going to jump right in. And Mrs. Holmes and Mrs. Mullen, if you guys can hear me, you guys, because of picture days, we are going to be working till about 10:05 or 10:07. I have my alarm set. When the alarm goes off, we need to pause from reading, and we're going to need to go get our pictures taken. So our class is going to go with Mrs. Faulkner's. So Mrs. Faulkner, you can stay on with us if you would like to, or you can you can jump off and read on your own. And then Mrs. Mullen and Mrs. Holmes, because, again, our schedules are different, you ladies can go ahead and you guys can do a quick review of Chapter 13 and then jump right into Chapter 14. Okay, Frank, do you have a question, a serious question for me?
What if we don't have the thing to get a picture?
Everybody will still get their picture taken. You don't need to have anything other than your smiling face. Okay. So, ladies and gentlemen, during homeroom, I asked all of you to take a minute and set up your notes. So, right now, let's do a quick review. Everybody on your notes. Let me restart my ladybug. There it is. Okay, you should all have your notes set up right now with the 3 things that I've had you guys write your notes on every single time. John, give me one of the things that you need to have on your notes.
The title.
The title. Okay, and the title of this is Chapter 14, Cornelius Fudge. Okay, this is not Chapter 14 notes. It is Chapter 14, Cornelius Fudge. We're writing down the names of the chapters. Casey, what's another thing that you need at the top of every single notebook page?
Your page number.
That's one thing I asked. Give me one thing. The page number. What page is this, Casey?
69.
This is page 69. And then the last thing that you need at the top of every single page. How about Jasmine? The date. Today is May 3rd. You all need to write the date down. So you should all have that written down. Okay, before we can read Chapter 14, because it's been over a week since we've read Chapter 13, we need to take a moment and just review what happened in Chapter 13. So everybody turn back in your notes, one page, and turn to your Chapter 13 notes about the very secret diary. Okay, Casey, this is where you being in a binder and only pulling out that piece of paper is a struggle. I asked you to go review your Chapter 13 notes, so yeah, you got to get them out. Same thing with you, John, if they're in a notebook. Okay. So let's review what happened in the very secret diary. Start us off with the big first important event. Michelle?
Ron and Harry find a diary in Molly Brown's bathroom.
Good. Who does the diary belong to? Jasmine? T.M. Riddle, plus 20 points for Hufflepuff. And then Michelle gave me a correct answer here. Okay. And ultimately, how does Harry learn how to work the diary? Because at first they don't think the diary works. How do they learn how to work the diary, Parker?
Because he spilled ink on it.
Give us more. You got to elaborate more. They spilled ink on it.
He spilled ink on it and it absorbed. So, and then when he was on his bed, he put a drop of ink on it and he washed it in the yard. So then he wrote, "Hello, my name is Harry," and it started writing that.
Okay, good. So I know that you guys didn't all hear that, but he explained how ink got spilled on the book. Harry noticed that the ink soaked in, so when he was lying on his bed one night, he dropped a drop of ink on it. It soaked in, so he decided to write in the book, and then the book began to write back to him. And what does Harry learn in the diary? What does the diary teach Harry? Okay, several things, but give us one thing. Over here, Alicia.
Hey everyone,
Be more specific. When?
50 years ago.
Good. Hagrid was the one that opened the Chamber of Secrets 50 years ago. That should be the number one thing that you guys got out of what you learned. Okay? So on the quiz, we asked, what did he learn? A lot of you left that off on the quiz. You said he learned some other things like the Slytherin's passcode. True, but ultimately not the most important thing. The most important thing is right there, that one. All right, keep going. What else did they learn, John? A mudblood died. Okay, it was Hagrid that opened it. A mudblood died. Let's keep going here. Same hands are popping up. Sophia.
They found out Harry found out that the monster is like a huge spider.
Yes, the monster right now is suspected to be a huge spider. A spider so big that it could do what? What did it do?
It could kill mud.
Okay, true. That's what we think is happening now. But what did he do? He ran over Tom Riddle. So when we say a big spider, like my wife told me this morning, she killed a big spider. She's like, I killed a big spider. You know, and that is big. But we're talking about a big spider. All right, a big spider.
They go over again.
Because this is a giant spider. This is the magic world. All right, Jasmine, anything else that we learned from the diary?
The diary holds secrets of Hogwarts.
Okay. Piper? Hagrid's first name is Rubius. All right, and Jane in the back.
That we learned that TM Riddle and Half-Blood.
TM Riddle's a half-blood. So we learned a lot of things. Hopefully the most important thing that you guys remember is that it was Hagrid that opened the Chamber of Secrets 50 years ago. And that's where that chapter ends, with Harry realizing that. So right now we're ready to begin reading chapter 14. So everybody, turn your notes back to your page for chapter 14 notes. Take out your Harry Potter books, open up to chapter 14. It begins on page 316. Okay, this is not the longest chapter, but this might be one of the most important chapters. If we think about plot and we think about the hero's journey, what part are we on? That part that goes up. It's called the what? Sophia?
Rising Action.
The rising action. And in the hero's journey, we call the rising action the what? It's on the board behind you guys. You guys could actually all turn around and look at it. Parker?
Climax?
Not the climax. Not yet. Sophia, I'm calling you again. The road of trial. So when it comes to the hero's journey, which we have not spent a ton of time focusing on, okay, in years past we had, but we're in Act 2, Stage 2. We're on the road of trials where Harry is going through all these obstacles. Harry's on that rising action. So he's about to be faced with his supreme ordeal, also known as the climax. All right? And so things are really heating up. And after we're done reading chapter 14, we will be in that supreme ordeal of the book. All right, everybody open up to page 316. You should have a pencil handy or a pen to write with, and you should have your notes right next to you. Okay, here we go. Do not forget, what do you do with important words? Unknown words. What do you do with them, Michelle? Underline them. Okay, chapter 14, it says, Cornelius Fudge. And you notice that on here, so far, J.K. Rowling, she always gives you some kind of a clue to what's going to happen in the chapter based off of the title. So the last chapter was The Very Secret Diary. It was all about the diary. Okay, so this one is called Cornelius Fudge. So it gives you lots of information here. What we know is that this is a character's name. So we're about to be introduced to a new character. Harry, Ron, and Hermione had always known that Hagrid had an unfortunate liking for large and monstrous creatures. During their first year at Hogwarts, he had tried to raise a dragon in his little wooden house. And it would be a long time before they forgot the giant three-headed dog that he'd christened Fluffy. And if, as a boy, Hagrid had heard that a monster was hidden somewhere in the castle, Harry was sure he'd have gone to any lengths for a glimpse of it. He probably thought it was a shame that the monster had been cooped up so long, and thought it deserved the chance to stretch its many legs. Harry could just imagine the 13-year-old Hagrid trying to fit a leash and a collar on it. but he was equally certain that Hagrid would never have meant to kill anybody. Harry half wished he hadn't found out how to work Riddle's diary. Again and again, Ron and Hermione made him recount what he'd seen, until he was heartily sick of telling them and sick of the long circular conversation that followed. "Riddle might have got the wrong person," said Hermione. "Maybe it was the same other monster that was attacking people." "How many monsters do you think this place can hold?" Ron asked dully. "We always knew Hagrid had been expelled," said Harry miserably, "and the attacks must have stopped after Hagrid was kicked out. Otherwise, Riddle wouldn't have got his award." Ron tried a different tact. "Riddle does sound like Percy. Who asked him to squeal on Hagrid anyway?" "But the monster had killed someone, Ron," said Hermione. "And Riddle was going to go back to some muggle orphanage if they closed Hogwarts," said Harry. "I don't blame him for wanting to stay here." "You met Hagrid down Nocturne Alley, didn't you, Harry?" "He was busy buying a fleshy and slug repellent," said Harry quickly. The three of them fell silent. After a long pause, Hermione voiced the naughtiest question of all in a hesitant voice. "Do you think we should go and ask Hagrid about it all?" "That'd be a cheerful visit," said Ron. "Hello, Hagrid. Tell us, have you been setting anything mad and hairy loose in the castle lately?" In the end, they decided that they would not say anything to Hagrid unless there was another attack. And as more and more days went by with no whisper from the disembodied voice, they became hopeful that they would never need to talk to him about why he had been expelled. It was now nearly 4 months since Justin and Nearly Headless Nick had been petrified, and nearly everybody seemed to think that the attacker, whoever it was, had retired for good. Peeves had finally got bored of his "O Potter, you rotter" song. Ernie Macmillan asked Harry quite politely to pass a bucket of leaping toadstools in herbology one day. And in March, several of the mandrakes threw a loud and raucous party in Greenhouse 3. This made Professor Sprout very happy. Okay, let's pause for a moment. Everybody should write something into your notes. I just read about 2.5 pages. Think, what are Harry, Ron, and Hermione doing? What are their thoughts about Hagrid? All right, anybody want to do a quick share of what they wrote down? And again, digital people, you guys can raise your digital hand. I can see that there's Michaela, Jolene are all on here. Yesenia is on here. You could raise your digital hand if you want to share. Piper, what'd you put in your notes about the start of this chapter? Okay, maybe I would add they're not sure if they should trust him. Okay, Ruth? Good, and I really like that. She got 2 important things in there in case you didn't hear. They decided not to talk to Hagrid about it, and the attacks have pretty much stopped. It's been 4 months since that first attack, and they've kind of stopped at this point. So that should be in your notes, okay? Those 2 things, I think, really can. You could include what Piper had. Harry, Ron, and Hermione aren't sure if they can trust Hagrid, but ultimately they decide, we're not going to talk to Hagrid about what we learned, and the attacks have kind of stopped. Okay? All right, let's keep going, Sophia.
I put Harry, Ron, and Hermione don't think Hagrid meant to hurt anybody.
Okay, good. That's something else that you could add. I'm on page 318, near the bottom. The moment they start trying to move into each other's pots, we'll know they're fully mature, she told Harry. Then we'll be able to revive those poor people in the hospital wing. The second years were given something new to think about during their Easter holidays. The time had come to choose their subjects for the 3rd year, a matter that Hermione at least took very seriously. It could affect our whole future, she told Harry and Ron as they pored over lists of new subjects, marking them with checks. I just want to give up potions, said Harry. We can't, said Ron gloomily. We keep all of our old subjects, or I'd have ditched Defense Against the Dark Arts. But that's very important, said Hermione, shocked. Not the way Lockhart teaches it, said Ron. I haven't learned anything from him except not to set pixies loose. Neville Longbottom had been sent letters from all the witches and wizards in his family, all giving him different advice on what to choose. Confused and worried, he sat reading the subject lists with his tongue poking out, asking people whether they thought arithmancy sounded more difficult than the study of ancient runes. Dean Thomas, who like Harry had grown up with muggles, ended up closing his eyes and jabbing his wand at the list, and then picking the subjects it landed on. Hermione took nobody's advice, but signed up for everything. Harry smiled grimly to himself at the thought of what Uncle Vernon and Aunt Petunia would say if he tried to discuss his career in wizardry with them. Not that he didn't get any guidance. Percy Weasley was eager to share his experience. Depends where you want to go, Harry, he said. It's never too early to think about the future, so I'd recommend divination. People say Muggle studies is a soft option, but I personally think wizards should have a thorough understanding of the non-magical community, particularly if they're thinking of working in close contact with them. Look at my father. He has to deal with Muggle business all the time. My brother Charlie was always more of an outdoor type, so he went for care of magical creatures. Play to your strengths, Harry. But the only thing Harry felt he was really good at was Quidditch. In the end, he chose the same new subjects as Ron, feeling that if he was lousy at them, at least he'd have someone friendly to help him. Okay, jot something down in your notes. I'd probably put down 2 things. What's happening with the mandrakes and what's happening with the students? What are the students doing? All right. So, what should go in your notes about Harry, Ron, and Hermione? What's going in your notes about them? Jane? Good. Harry, Ron, and Hermione are picking their classes for next year. And what should you write down about Professor Sprout and the Mandrakes? It was only a very short little paragraph at the bottom of page 318, but it was important. Somebody has to tell me before we go on, and you guys need to add it to your notes. All right, Frank.
They're growing up. Like, they're getting older.
So what's that mean? Why is that important? Good. You should have something in your notes about the mandrakes. It says at the bottom of 318, the moment they start trying to move into each other's pots, we'll know that they're fully mature, she told Harry. Then we'll be able to revive those poor people in the hospital wing. The mandrakes are almost mature, so the petrified people are going to become unpetrified. Did you say that in your notes, Casey? It needs to be. Something else I've noticed in your notes, a lot of people are using pronouns when you guys should be using proper nouns. All right, proper nouns, you should be using character names, not words like they. All right, if it's Harry, Ron, and Hermione are choosing classes for next year, it needs to be their names. It should not be the word they. Something that a lot of people have been doing. That's lazy note-taking. All right, I'm on the bottom of page 320. Gryffindor's next Quidditch match would be against Hufflepuff. Wood was insisting on team practices every night after dinner, so that Harry barely had time for anything but Quidditch and homework. However, the training session was getting better, or at least drier, and the evening before Saturday's match, he went up to his dormitory to drop off his broomstick, feeling Gryffindor's chances for the Quidditch Cup had never been better. But his cheerful mood didn't last long. At the top of the stairs to the dormitory, he met Neville Longbottom, who was looking frantic. Harry, I don't know who did it. I just found. Watching Harry fearfully, Neville pushed open the door. The contents of Harry's trunk had been thrown everywhere. His cloak lay ripped on the floor. The bedclothes had been pulled off of his four-poster, and the drawer had been pulled out of his bedside cabinet. The contents were strewn over the mattress. Harry walked over to the bed, open-mouthed, treading on the few loose pages of Travels with Trolls, as he and Neville pulled the blankets back onto his bed. Ron, Dean, and Seamus came in. Dean swore loudly. "What happened, Harry?" "No idea," said Harry. But Ron was examining Harry's robes. All the pockets were hanging out. "Someone's been looking for something," said Ron. "Is there anything missing?" Harry started to pick up all of his things and throw them into his trunk. It was only as he threw the last of the Lockhart books back into it that he realized what wasn't there. "Riddle's diary is gone," he said in an undertone to Ron. "What?" Harry jerked his head toward the dormitory door, and Ron followed him out. They hurried down to the Gryffindor common room, which was half empty, and joined Hermione, who was sitting alone, reading a book called Ancient Ruins Made Easy. Hermione looked aghast at the news. Whew, I got underlined aghast. Hope you guys are all too. "But only a Gryffindor could have stolen. Nobody else knows our password." "Exactly," said Harry. Okay, add something to your notes. Don't say they. So Casey, what are you putting in your notes?
I was going to say the diary and Harry's stuff is all gone.
Well, Harry's stuff's not gone. His stuff is all there, but the diary is gone. So again, in your notes, you guys can see here, I put someone stole Riddle's diary.
I put a good
All right. Someone. Okay, if you have something to say, you raise your hand. You shouldn't say they. Again, we don't know who the they is. All right, let's keep on going. Again, if you were doing a cheat chart or if you were doing a set of Cornell notes, what question comes to mind right now? Piper? Right, we could talk about who do we think has taken the diary? Who would take the diary? All right, page 322, right in the middle there. They woke the next day to brilliant sunshine and a light, refreshing breeze. "Perfect Quidditch conditions," said Wood enthusiastically at the Gryffindor table, loading the team's plates with scrambled eggs. "Harry, buck up there. You need a decent breakfast." Harry had been staring down the packed Gryffindor table, wondering if the new owner of Riddle's diary was right in front of his eyes. Hermione had been urging him to report the robbery, but Harry didn't like the idea. He'd have to tell a teacher all about the diary and how many people knew why Hagrid had been expelled 50 years ago. He didn't want to be the one who brought it all up again. Okay, what could you guys write down in your notes right here? And Sophia?
We could write that Harry doesn't want to tell the teacher because he would bring up this idea about what he found out about the diary.
Very good. Again, in your notes. Again, and we could talk about something as a best question. Do we think, should Harry tell a teacher about the robbery? It's a really good question to discuss, isn't it? Because what is Harry deciding to do, Michelle? Good. Harry doesn't want to tell anybody. He wants to keep it to himself, and he tells us why. Because he doesn't want to get into all that stuff about Hagrid 50 years ago. All right. I'm back on page 323. As he left the Great Hall with Ron and Hermione to go and collect his Quidditch things, another very serious worry was added to Harry's growing list. He had just set foot on the marble staircase when he heard it yet again. "Kill this time. Let me rip. Tear." He shouted aloud, and Ron and Hermione both jumped away from him in alarm. "The voice," said Harry, looking over his shoulder. "I just heard it again. Didn't you?" Ron shook his head, wide-eyed. Hermione, however, clapped a hand to her forehead. Harry, I think I've just understood something. I've got to go to the library. And she sprinted away up the stairs. What does she understand? Said Harry distractedly, still looking around, trying to tell where the voice had come from. Loads more than I do, said Ron, shaking his head. But why's she got to go to the library? Because that's what Hermione does, said Ron, shrugging. When in doubt, go to the library. All right, so what does Harry hear? Harry hears what? What should go in your notes? Rylan, what should you put in your notes about the voice?
Harry hears it again and Hermione has to go to the library.
Good. Harry hears the voice again. Sorry, Michaela, I just saw you had your hand up. Harry hears the voice again. And when he does, Hermione, what's her reaction immediately? Raise your hand so you can, again, get points. Casey, what's Hermione's reaction?
I think I understood something and I gotta go to the library.
Very good. She says that she's understood something. She's figured something out. And so Hermione bolts off to go to the library. All right. So we are now on page bottom of 323, very bottom. And because we have to go get our pictures done here, spring pictures. And, oh, actually, no, we go at 10:10. We still have a while. Yeah. So we're going to keep on reading. Bottom of page 323. That's a great quote, too, by Hermione right there on the bottom of page 323. When in doubt, go to the library. Harry stood irresolute. I'm underlining it. Harry stood irresolute, trying to catch the voice again. But people were now emerging from the great hall behind him, talking loudly, exiting through the front doors on their way to the Quidditch pitch. You'd better get moving, said Ron. It's nearly 11. The match. Harry raced up to Gryffindor Tower, collect his Nimbus 2000, and joined the large crowd swarming across the grounds. But his mind was still in the castle, along with the bodiless voice, and as he pulled on his scarlet robes in the locker room, his only comfort was that everyone was now outside to watch the game. The teams walked onto the field to tumultuous applause. Oliver Wood took off for a warm-up flight around the goalposts. Madam Hooch released the balls. The Hufflepuffs, who played in canary yellow, were standing in a huddle, having a last-minute discussion of tactics. Harry was just mounting his broom when Professor McGonagall came half marching, half running across the pitch, carrying an enormous purple megaphone. Harry's heart dropped like a stone. This match has been canceled, Professor McGonagall called through the megaphone, addressing the packed stadium. There were boos and shouts. Oliver Wood, looking devastated, landed and ran toward Professor McGonagall without getting off of his broomstick. But Professor, he shouted, we've got to play. The cup, Gryffindor. Professor McGonagall ignored him and continued to shout through the megaphone. All students are to make their way back to the house common rooms, where their heads of houses will give them further information. As quickly as you can, please. Then she lowered the megaphone and beckoned Harry over to her. Okay, write something to your notes. What happened to the Quidditch match? Write it down in your notes. Hold up your notes so I can see them, Casey. Okay, because you're doing Cornell notes, you also need to write questions. Cornell notes require, and so I've mentioned a couple times where you could ask a question. And right now, a really good question comes to mind.
Why is it canceled?
See, it's not that hard, right? You all should be asking yourself, and that might not be a good discussion question, Casey, But why do we think why do we think that the match got canceled? I don't want you guys to raise your hand to answer that. But that's what a good reader would be thinking about right now. I wonder why. Let's see if we learn why.
I think we will.
Okay, I'm on the middle of page 325. Potter, I think you'd better come with me. Wondering how she could possibly suspect him this time, Harry saw Ron detach himself from the complaining crowd. He came running up to them as they set off towards the castle. To Harry's surprise, Professor McGonagall didn't object. Well, yes, perhaps you'd better come too, Weasley. Some of the students swarming around them were grumbling about the match being canceled. Others looked worried. Harry and Ron followed Professor McGonagall back into the school and up the marble staircase, but they weren't taken to anybody's office this time. This will be a bit of a shock, said Professor McGonagall in a surprisingly gentle voice as they approached the infirmary. There has been another attack, another double attack. Harry's insides did a horrible somersault. Professor McGonagall pushed the door open, and he and Ron entered. Madame Pomfrey was bending over a fifth-year girl with long, curly hair. Harry recognized her as a Ravenclaw they'd accidentally asked for directions to the Slytherin common room. And on the bed next to her was Hermione! Ron groaned. Hermione lay utterly still, her eyes open and glassy. They were found near the library, said Professor McGonagall. I don't suppose either of you can explain this. It was on the floor next to them? She was holding up a small circular mirror. Harry and Ron shook their heads, both staring at Hermione. I will escort you back to the Gryffindor Tower, said Professor McGonagall heavily. I need to address the students in any case. Okay, add something to your notes. You should all know what to add now. Yes, Parker.
It's kind of ironic that Hermione's petrified because, even though Draco isn't the heir,
Mm-hmm.
but he does want Hermione dead.
He does. But is she dead?
No.
No, she's petrified. So Hermione is petrified. All right. So now remember, when it comes to Harry and his hero's journey that he's on, Harry has two allies. Okay, remember, Ron and Hermione. And now, one of Harry's number one allies is petrified. She's gone. So Harry has lost a very important ally. Yes, Michelle?
So when Hermione wakes up, would she know what the monster looks like? Or no, because she was just in a moment of shock?
See, that is a great question. You should put that in your notes, or you should put that in for best question. All right? And again, Casey, if you're doing Cornell notes, you have to have a summary, you have to have questions. You can see in my notes behind me, it says 3 to 4 questions, 8 to 10 bullets, and a 3 to 4 sentence summary. All right, so I've got that in my notes. Hermione gets petrified. Okay, we got about 5 more minutes to read before we have to go leave to get our pictures. And then whatever's not read, we'll finish after pictures. We should have enough time. All students will return to their house common room by 6 o'clock in the evening. No student is to leave their dormitories after that time. You will be escorted to each lesson by a teacher. No student is to use the bathroom unaccompanied by a teacher. All further Quidditch training and matches are to be postponed. There will be no more evening activities. Sounds like what happened with coronavirus, huh?
Yeah.
Okay, they're kind of like going almost on lockdown. The Gryffindors, packed inside the common room, listened to Professor McGonagall in silence. She rolled up the parchment from which she had been reading and said, in a somewhat choked voice, I need hardly add that I have rarely been so distressed. It is likely that the school will be closed unless the culprit behind these attacks is caught. I would urge anyone who thinks they might know anything about them to come forward. Man, what should Harry do right now?
Do it.
Ruth? So should Harry come forward? Again, Casey, that's another really good question we could all be asking ourselves. What do you think? Should Harry come forward and tell what he knows? Parker?
Yes, he definitely should.
Parker says yes. Frank?
He wants to go back to the jerseys.
Yes.
What do you think, Jolene? Should Harry come forward and tell McGonagall what he knows?
Yeah.
Okay. How about who else? Michaela. Should Harry come forward and tell McGonagall?
Yeah.
Yes. All right. What house are you in?
Hufflepuff.
Hufflepuff. Alicia. No. Okay. Alicia says no. Why no? Because everyone else said yes.
Because we still don't know for a fact if that's true. We're going to show you.
Okay. We still don't know if it's true.
So if he says it and it's not true, then Hagrid gets in trouble. What's the point?
All right. Parker.
In response to Alicia, she said, I don't think Hagrid would get in trouble because it was 50 years ago and McGonagall probably knows about it. But I think he definitely should because even if it isn't correct information, I think they'd be willing to take it anyway.
Okay. How about you, Piper?
I think he should because they can find a way to stop all the attacks.
All right. I'll go Sophia. John, I wasn't intending on actually talking about this question, but we are about to leave to go get our pictures. So let's take a second. We'll talk about this question, and this will have to be a good stopping spot for us right now, and we'll pick up when we get back from pictures. What do you think, Sophia?
I
Please don't do that.
Harry shouldn't because
Okay, what else is already in your notes before we continue to read? Rylan.
They said they weren't going to tell Hagrid unless there was another attack.
Good. They weren't going to talk to a Hagrid, but now there was another attack. Who was the attack on?
Hermione and I'm pretty sure.
Good. Hermione is petrified. That's very important that is in your notes. Hermione is petrified, so there was another attack. Piper?
Harry or the boys, it said kill this time, let me quick, scared. And Hermione was
Very good. I'd have that before Hermione gets attacked. Good. So now, guys, we've got just under 10 pages left to go. All right, page 327. I'm right in the middle about she climbed. She climbed somewhat awkwardly out of the portrait hole, and the Gryffindors began talking immediately. That's 2 Gryffindors down, not counting a Gryffindor ghost. 1 Ravenclaw and 1 Hufflepuff, said the Weasley twins. Friend Lee Jordan, counting on his fingers. Haven't had any of the teachers noticed that the Slytherins are all safe? Isn't it obvious? All this stuff's coming from Slytherin. The heir of Slytherin. The monster of Slytherin. Why don't they just chuck all the Slytherins out? He roared to nods and scattered applause. Page 328. Percy Weasley was sitting in a chair behind Lee, but for once he didn't seem keen to make his views heard. He was looking pale and stunned. Percy's in shock, George told Harry quietly. That Ravenclaw girl, Penelope Clearwater, she's a prefect. I don't think he thought the monster would dare attack a prefect. But Harry was only half listening. He didn't seem to be able to get rid of the picture of Hermione lying on the hospital bed as though carved out of stone. And if the culprit wasn't caught soon, he was looking at a lifetime back with the Dursleys. Tom Riddle had turned Hagrid in because he was faced with the prospect of a Muggle orphanage if the school closed. Harry now knew exactly how he felt. What are we going to do? Said Ron quietly in Harry's ear. Do you think they suspect Hagrid? We've got to go talk to him, said Harry, making up his mind. I can't believe it's him this time. But if he set the monster loose last time, he'll know how to get inside the Chamber of Secrets, and that's a start. But McGonagall said we've got to stay in our tower unless we're in class. I think, said Harry more quietly still, it's time to get my dad's old cloak out again. Harry had inherited just one thing from his father, a long and silvery invisibility cloak. It was their only chance of sneaking out of the school to visit Hagrid without anyone knowing about it. They went to bed at the usual time, waited until Neville, Dean, and Seamus had stopped discussing the Chamber of Secrets, and finally had fallen asleep, then got up, dressed again, and threw the cloak over themselves. Awesome. So what are Harry and Ron doing? Jasmine.
They're sneaking out of their chambers with an invisible cloak.
Good. They're sneaking out of their chamber to go where?
To the chamber.
No, they're not going to the chamber. They're going to Hagrid's. So they're sneaking out of their dormitory. It's a better word than chamber. They're sneaking out of their dorm, all right? And they're going to talk to Hagrid. Casey, do you have that in your notes? If I'm saying it, I want it down in your notes. And I included that Harry and Ron use the invisibility cloak to sneak down to Hagrid's hut. Okay, middle of page 329. Are you ready, Frank? The journey through the dark and deserted castle corridors wasn't enjoyable. Harry, who had wandered through the castle at night several times before, had never seen it so crowded after sunset. Teachers, prefects, and ghosts were marching the corridors in pairs, staring around for any unusual activity. Their invisibility cloak didn't stop them making any noise, and there was a particularly tense moment when Ron stubbed his toe only yards from the spot where Snape stood standing guard. Thankfully, Snape sneezed at almost exactly the moment Ron swore. It was with relief that they reached the oak front doors and eased them open. It was a clear, starry night. They hurried toward the lit windows of Hagrid's house and pulled off the cloak only when they were right outside his front door. Seconds after they had knocked, Hagrid flung it open. They found themselves face to face with him, aiming a crossbow at them. Fang, the boarhound, barked loudly behind him. "Oh," he said, lowering the weapon and staring at them. "What are you two doing here?" "What's that for?" said Harry, pointing at the crossbow as they stepped inside. "Oh, nothing, Hagrid muttered. "I've been expecting, doesn't matter. Sit down. I'll make tea." He hardly seemed to know what he was doing. He nearly extinguished the fire, spilling water from the kettle on it, and then smashed the teapot with a nervous jerk of his massive head. "Are you okay, Hagrid?" said Harry. "Did you hear about Hermione?" "Oh, I heard all right," said Hagrid, a slight break in his voice. He kept glancing nervously at the windows. He poured them both large mugs of boiling water. He had forgotten to add tea bags, and was just putting a slab of fruitcake on a plate when there was a loud knock on the door. Hagrid dropped the fruitcake. Harry and Ron exchanged panic-stricken looks, then threw the invisibility cloak back over themselves and retreated into a corner. Hagrid checked that they were hidden, seized his crossbow, and flung open his door once more. Page 331. "Good evening, Hagrid." It was Dumbledore. He entered looking deadly serious and was followed by a second very odd-looking man. The stranger had rumpled gray hair and an anxious expression and was wearing a strange mixture of clothes: a pinstriped suit, a scarlet tie, a long black coat, and pointed purple boots. Under his arm, he carried a lime green bowler. "That's Dad's boss," Ron breathed. "Cornelius Fudge, the Minister of Magic." Harry elbowed Ron hard to make him shut up. Take a moment, add something to your notes. Be specific, Casey. All right. Casey, what'd you write in your notes?
Dumbledore and the Minister went
You're missing something important. They went to Hagrid's house. Casey, look at me when I'm talking to you. So it's really good. You got a great start. Hagrid and the Dumbledore and the Minister of Magic, which is Cornelius Fudge, come to Hagrid's hut. When? There's an important when that you guys need to have in your notes. Anybody can answer it.
Harry and Ron were not going to tea and
Yeah, I don't. You don't even need the tea and fruitcake. Simply, while Harry and Ron are, what are they doing?
They're investigating.
Yes, but what's the important part? What are they doing? Piper.
Sneaking out.
Okay, yes.
To find out if Hagrid opened the chamber. Well, to talk to Hagrid about the chamber.
Right, but what are they underneath, which is important for the scene that's about to play, Frank?
Invisibility cloak.
Good, so they're under the invisibility cloak. So they're doing all those things. Those are things that you can have in your notes. But I'm already here, guys. What's happening outside the window should not be your concern. Okay? Do you understand, Casey? Okay. Alicia?
I was gonna say that I wrote, we meet Cornelius Fudge, the Minister of Magic, Mr. Weasley's boss, and when Harry and Ron are trying to confront
Good. It's important that we have Harry and Ron are there. They're underneath the invisibility cloak. And in come Dumbledore and then the Minister of Magic, Cornelius Fudge. Okay, I'm going to keep reading on 331. All right, right there where it says bad business. Oh, no, sorry, no, right above that. Hagrid had gone pale and sweaty. He dropped into one of his chairs and looked from Dumbledore to Cornelius Fudge. Bad business, Hagrid? Said Fudge in rather clipped tones. Very bad business. Had to come. 4 attacks on Muggle-borns. Things have gone far enough. Ministry's got to act. I never, said Hagrid, looking imploringly at Dumbledore. What are you going to do with imploringly? Underline it. You know I never, Professor Dumbledore, sir. I want it understood, Cornelius, that Hagrid has my full confidence, said Dumbledore, frowning at Fudge. Look, Albus, said Fudge uncomfortably. Hagrid's record's against him. Ministry's got to do something. The school governors have been in touch. Yet again, Cornelius, I tell you that taking Hagrid away will not help in the slightest, said Dumbledore. His blue eyes were full of a fire Harry had never seen before. Look at it from my point of view, said Fudge, fidgeting with his bowler. I am under a lot of pressure. Got to be seen to be doing something. If it turns out it wasn't Hagrid, he'll be back and no more said. But I've got to take him. Got to. Wouldn't it be doing my duty? Take me, said Hagrid, who was trembling. Take me where? For a short stretch only, said Fudge, not meeting Hagrid's eyes. Not a punishment, Hagrid, more a precaution. If someone else is caught, you'll be let out with a full apology. Not Azkaban, croaked Hagrid. Before Fudge could answer, there was another loud rap on the door. Dumbledore answered it. It was Harry's turn for an elbow in the ribs. He'd let out an audible gasp. Mr. Lucius Malfoy strode into Hagrid's hut, swathed in a long black traveling cloak, smiling a cold and satisfied smile. Fang started to growl. All right, so what's happened? Why is Fudge there? Why is Fudge there? Should go in your notes, so write it down. Cornelius Fudge has come to Hagrid's to do what? John, write it. Did you write it, Casey? Can you read what you wrote? Okay, but you didn't include Cornelius Fudge. You didn't actually include the detail. You have to be specific. Cornelius Fudge. Okay, it's not like Hagrid's like, hey, you know what, guys? I'm gonna go to Azkaban. Check you out later. No, Hagrid is being what, basically? Forced. He's being taken. He's being arrested. Okay? Hagrid is being taken to Azkaban. Now, again, it doesn't tell us what Azkaban is right now. Alright, but I know that a lot of us know, and it's not a spoiler. Alright, but Azkaban, Piper, is a what? It's the wizard prison. I think it was mentioned in the first book as well, and it might have been mentioned a little bit earlier in this book. But Azkaban is the wizard prison. All right, so Cornelius Fudge has come to Hagrid's hut with Dumbledore to take him to prison. Do you have that written down in your notes, Casey? Because that's, again, the full detail about what should go in your notes. We need to, we need to be specific in our notes. And I seem to be getting a lot of pushback from you every time I ask you to be specific in your notes.
There's also a book called The Prisoner of Azkaban.
There is. The third book is called Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban. Okay, let us continue. Okay, we have about 20 minutes left. We only have about 5 or 6 pages left, but these are important pages. Very important. All right, bottom of page 332. Okay, I'm going to begin. Before Fudge could answer, there was another loud rap on the door, because who is showing up now? No, not Draco Malfoy. Lucius. Okay, put it in your notes. Move it. Lucius Malfoy shows up. Mr. Lucius Malfoy strode into Hagrid's hut, swathed in a long black traveling cloak, smiling a cold and satisfied smile. Fang started to growl. Already here, Fudge, he said approvingly. Good, good. What are you doing here? Said Hagrid furiously. Get out of my house. My dear man, please believe me, I have no pleasure at all in being inside your, do you call this a house? Said Lucius Malfoy, sneering as he looked around the small cabin. I simply called at the school and was told that the headmaster was here. And what exactly did you want with me, Lucius? Said Dumbledore. He spoke politely, but the fire was still blazing in his blue eyes. Dreadful thing, Dumbledore, said Malfoy lazily, taking out a long roll of parchment. But the governors feel it is time for you to step aside. This is an order of suspension. You'll find all 12 signatures on it. I'm afraid we feel you're losing your touch. How many attacks have there been now? 2 more this afternoon, wasn't it? At this rate, there'll be no Muggleborns left at Hogwarts, and we all know what an awful loss that would be to the school. Oh, now see here, Lucius, said Fudge, looking alarmed. Dumbledore suspended? No, last thing we want just now. The appointment, or suspension, of a headmaster is a matter for the governors, Fudge, said Mr. Malfoy smoothly. And as Dumbledore has failed to stop these attacks... Alright, so why is Draco's dad there? Why is Lucius Malfoy there? Jasmine.
To give Dumbledore his suspension letter.
Yes. Okay, so he's there to tell Dumbledore, you are being suspended. 20 points to Hufflepuff. So, let's think about this for a second before we read the end. Okay, and what is in danger of happening? Harry's already lost who? Who has he already lost? Frank?
Hagrid.
No, he hasn't lost Hagrid yet. Who?
Hermione.
He's already lost Hermione in this chapter. And he's about to lose who else? You gotta raise your hand. Alicia. He's about to lose Hagrid. And why is that important? Who is Hagrid to Harry? We've been talking about this a bit. Okay, Jasmine, you think you got it? He is his what?
Role model?
Nope. You got it, because you need to follow along with every lesson. Here we go. Michelle, he's the mentor. Okay? The hero's journey. Every hero needs a mentor. Okay? Someone who is not a peer. Ron is a peer, or Hermione is a peer. So that's why they are allies. They are friends. But anybody who is older, wiser, okay, who is your senior, like in this case Hagrid, Hagrid is one of Harry's mentors. So Harry has lost his smartest ally, am I right? Ron's a strong ally, but who's the smartest ally? So Harry has lost his smartest ally, and he's about to lose Hagrid, his mentor. And who else is he about to lose? Sophia? And Dumbledore is also one of his mentors.
So he's going to have 0 mentors now.
He is in danger right now of losing 2 mentors, and he's already lost his smartest ally. And that would leave him who to really, really help him out? Ron. It would just be Harry and Ron. That's all he'd have left. So Ron is not the smartest. Ron is very loyal. Ron is probably the BFF. Okay? But Hermione is definitely, we know, the smartest. Let's finish up this chapter here. Okay, this is what Harry's at risk of losing right now. I'm on the bottom of page 333. I'll start with the appointment. The appointment or suspension of the headmaster is a matter for the governors, Fudge, said Mr. Malfoy smoothly. Now, do you guys, before we go on, you guys know who the governors would be? What would that be like in comparison to APW? Ruth?
It would be.
Okay, good guess, but no, it wouldn't be them. Rylan?
School board.
It would be like our school board. Okay, we have a school board that's made up of people who live in the community. Moms, dads, parents, okay, are sitting on the school board. All right, and so like our administrator, Mrs. Wilson, the administrators, they answer to the school board. All right, who do I answer to? The principals. All right, so if I were to need to go to my superior, either for support or if I had done something wrong, it would be the principal. But okay, the principals, so Dumbledore is kind of like the principal of Hogwarts. All right, and so now it's no different than if one of our principals, the school board, came in and said, all right, we're calling for you to be suspended. All right, so the school board, in this case they call it the governors, are trying to suspend Dumbledore, and Hagrid is being taken away to Azkaban prison. Page 333 again. Is a matter for the governors, Fudge, said Mr. Malfoy, smoothly. And as Dumbledore has failed to stop these attacks, see here, Malfoy, if Dumbledore can't stop them, page 334, said Fudge, whose upper lip was sweating now, I mean to say, who can? That remains to be seen, said Mr. Malfoy, with a nasty smile. But as all 12 of us have voted, Hagrid leapt to his feet, his shaggy black head grazing the ceiling. And how many did you have to threaten and blackmail before they agreed, Malfoy, eh? He roared. Dear, dear, you know, that temper of yours will lead you into trouble one of these days, Hagrid, said Mr. Malfoy. I would advise you not to shout at the Azkaban guards like that. They won't like it at all. You can't take Dumbledore, yelled Hagrid, making Fang the boarhound cower and whimper in his basket. Take him away, and Muggleborns won't stand a chance. There'll be killings next. Can I stop again? I feel like I'm stopping a lot in this chapter. But here, Hagrid's about to be arrested, and who's Hagrid worried about?
Dumbledore.
Raise your hand, Frank. He's worried about Dumbledore, and who else?
I think he's worried about if they
Excuse
take
me.
Dumbledore again.
Who's he worried about?
He's worried about Dumbledore and like if he's gone, then all these kids might get like killed.
But you're still not answering a who. Keep it more simple. He's worried about Dumbledore, and he's worried about the... No. The Muggleborns, or the students. Hagrid is being arrested. Is Hagrid worried about himself?
No.
No, he's worried about Dumbledore, and he's worried about the students. Okay? What does this tell us about Hagrid? What does this tell us about Hagrid? All right, Jane, I don't know if your hand's up back there, but I haven't talked to you all day. Jane, what does that tell you about Hagrid?
And
He's caring. He's very caring for the people. Ruth?
He's selfless.
Selfless. He's not thinking about himself in this moment where he really should be. He's being selfless. He's thinking of others.
And with that in mind, how could he open the Chamber of Secrets?
Think about that. That's a really deep thought right there.
Who's the kids?
Because here again, we see Hagrid being arrested, and we see Hagrid, whose worry immediately goes to the kids and Dumbledore. And if that's true, could he be the person who opened the chamber 50 years ago?
No.
It's very hard for us to think that those two things can exist at the same time. That Hagrid would be so worried about the kids, but he would also have been the person that opened the Chamber of Secrets 50 years ago, and a kid died. Those two things don't really fit together, do they?
Well, also, as a kid, he might have been, like, not how he is now. Kind of like a bully, kind of.
True. We know we change. Maybe it was that situation, that event in his life that changed him. It could be. These are really great thoughts that you guys are sharing with me today. I'm jotting points down as you guys are sharing. All right, let's keep reading here because I don't want to run out of time, and we got to get to the end of the chapter. And then we'll spend the rest of class talking. Okay, I am on page 334, near the calm yourself, Hagrid. It was right after Hagrid said, you take Dumbledore away and there'll be killings next. Calm yourself, Hagrid, said Dumbledore sharply. He looked at Lucius Malfoy. If the governors want my removal, Lucius, I shall of course step aside. But, stuttered Fudge. No, growled Hagrid. Dumbledore had not taken his bright blue eyes off Lucius Malfoy's cold gray ones. However, said Dumbledore, speaking very slowly and clearly, so that none of them could miss a word. You will find that I will only truly have left this school when none here are loyal to me. You will also find that help will always be given at Hogwarts to those who ask for it. For a second, Harry was almost sure Dumbledore's eyes flickered toward the corner where he and Ron stood hidden. Admirable sentiments, said Malfoy, bowing. We shall all miss your, highly individual way of running things, Albus, and only hope that your successor will manage to prevent any, killings. He strode to the cabin door, opened it, and bowed Dumbledore out. Fudge, fiddling with his bowler, waited for Hagrid to go ahead of him. But Hagrid stood his ground, took a deep breath, and said, carefully, if anyone wanted to find out some stuff, all they'd have to do would be to follow the spiders. That'd lead 'em right. That's all I'm saying. Fudge stared at him in amazement. All right, I'm coming, said Hagrid, pulling on his moleskin overcoat. But as he was about to follow Fudge through the door, he stopped again and said loudly, and some of you'll need to feed Fang while I'm away. The door banged shut, and Ron pulled off the invisibility cloak. We're in trouble now, he said hoarsely. No Dumbledore? They might as well close the school tonight. There'll be an attack a day with him gone. Fang started howling, scratching at the closed door.
Boom.
Okay, take a minute. Add a couple more things in your notes. Think about what happened to Dumbledore, what happened to Hagrid, what was Hagrid's advice, what was Dumbledore's advice. They each had some sort of parting words at the end there. John, you really should be still filling in notes.
Yeah, I was.
And we're trying to be real specific, right, Casey? Okay, be specific. In your notes, I would write down, again, what happened to Dumbledore at the end and what was Dumbledore's advice. I would write down what happened to Hagrid and what would Hagrid tell Ron and Harry.
Mr. Truman, can I share what happened?
Share your what?
What I put my notes.
Sure. All right, who wants to share what's some of the last things that you guys added into your notes? Sophia.
First thing that I wrote down, and it was very amazing what Hagrid said. He said that if anyone wanted to find more advice about what happened, they would have to follow spiders.
Good. So you guys should all make sure you have that down in your notes somewhere, all right? So Jamie, Casey, look at your notes right now. Do you have something down about Hagrid tells Harry and Ron to follow the spiders? Oh, yeah, you get one thing. One. Okay? So everyone look at your notes. You should have that in your notes. Hagrid tells Ron and Harry that they need to follow the spiders. That's his advice as he's going off to prison. Alicia, what did you put in your notes?
I'm about to put it in. I'm going to ask a question and say, do you think that the spiders lead to the Chamber of Secrets?
Okay. Yes or no? It's a yes or no question, so you want to, explain. See, a more interesting question, Alicia, is who can take Alicia's thought and put that into a more interesting question? Put us in the character's shoes again. Remember how I like to use the words if? Try it out, Jasmine.
If the monster is really a spider, then maybe he can call the spiders of the castle, and maybe that will lead them to the rituals.
Okay, that's a really good inference. Good inference. But we're trying to take Alicia's idea of her question about do you think the spiders will lead to the Chamber of Secrets? And we're trying to ask, almost taking that, which is a good question, and taking it and pushing it and making it into a great question. How about you, Rylan, in the back?
I would think if they lead to the chamber, because I don't even think a spider.
You're answering her question. We're trying to take her question and turn it into a better question. Can you take her question and turn it into a real solid level 2 question where we're in the book? Can you do that? You want to give it a shot?
I don't think the spider is the monster in the chamber.
Okay, but that's an inference that you're not giving me a question. I'm going to go over to Frank for a question.
If you were Harry, would you follow Spike? If you saw Spider, would you follow it?
Yeah, I would actually just word it this way. If you were Harry, would you look for these spiders? Okay, this is what we mean. So, Alicia, we take that idea, and now you put us in Harry's shoes. Basically, you're asking us, if you were Harry, what would you do? Would you go looking for spiders? Would you not go looking for spiders? Which, again, is more interesting because, again, your answer, we eventually will find out the answer to that by reading the book. But with Frank's question, you'll never find out the answer. That's why it is a good discussion question. All we can do with Frank's question is we can't really ever answer it. All we can just do is discuss our opinions about it. If we were Harry, would we go looking for the spiders?
Yeah.
All right, and then we can start explaining it. Ultimately, we will get an answer to your question, though, Alicia, which is why your question is a very good question. It is the kind of question that a good reader is going to think about. Okay, if we follow the spiders, are we going to figure out what the monster is? So that's a great question for that. But as a discussion question, we take that idea and put us into the character's shoes. Listen up, you guys have just 5 minutes left. This is where I want us to be able to upload a picture of our notes. So every single person in this room, has got their homework done. And they don't have to think about taking out ELA homework again tonight. And then tomorrow, we'll talk about these discussion questions. And any questions that you guys have, you'll be able to ask your questions then. Casey, I need you to leave the plexiglass divider alone. All right. So with that said, if you're virtual, go ahead and do that. If you in my room need a computer, put your mask on. They're on the black table. Come up and get your computer.
Can I clean them tonight?
Someone asked Friday, didn't they?
Yeah, it was Alicia.
Okay.
No, it was Big.
Okay, Cheyenne, do you have a question for me?
If I did the sticky note,
No, just kind of like arrange them on your page where I can see kind of how many you have and I can see as much as you can show me. And then just take a picture of all of them. All right? And again, I know that you guys are kind of doing notes in each person. I say this about your homework and your classwork. You get out of your classwork what you put into it. So a person who puts a lot into their classwork, they're going to do well on the summary challenge tomorrow. They're also going to do well on the quiz. If there's a person that doesn't put a lot of effort into it, they don't get as much out of it. So the only reason normally I wouldn't grade your notes, I would simply come around and check to see, did you do them? And that's really what I'm doing with your pictures. It's really just checking to make sure that you did your notes. This is kind of one of those things where Mrs. Mullen was talking when we did the awards. I might not read every single note, but I'm going to open up your page and I'm going to look to see, do you have your date, your title, and your page number? Do you have a page full of notes? All right, you know, Casey, you did Cornell notes, so you actually have to go back and write a summary. I don't know if Cornell notes is a great idea for you personally. For you, I would do more like a T-chart or bullets or a web. All right, but I'm able to just check to make sure that you guys did your notes. Tomorrow, we'll do the discussion, and we will do our quiz and our 45-second summary challenge. All right, do you have a question, Alicia, about anything that I just said?
No, but I still don't know.
And again, I have no problem with. Again, there are people in the room that have a system, and I know exactly who those are. So for those people that have, and they use, like, I know, Alicia, you use that app that allows you to kind of scan the document really well. You can feel free. Everybody else, though, should be uploading their homework or their classwork right now. Yes. Gotcha. All right, does any virtual students have any questions? Okay, if no virtual students have any questions, I'm going to close out of that. And I'm going to close out of our meeting. Casey, please stop playing with your pencil.
Do I need the Chromebook for any other class?
I can't say. You might. Parker, I'm not done. I'm still recording our lesson and I'm not done. So tomorrow, guys, let's do a quick. Tomorrow we begin class by going over what? Discussion questions. And then after our discussion questions, we will do what? Raise your hand. Jasmine, we're going to do our quiz. Okay, we're going to do our 3-question quiz. Then after our quiz, Alicia, we'll do we'll do our 45-second summary challenge. Okay, so make sure that you guys bring your notes with you tomorrow. Everybody should have those notes for the discussion. You should still also have your book. All right, so with that said, if there's no other questions, guys, that's all I have for you guys today. Make sure that your pictures are uploaded, and then you guys can pack everything up because next we have
So lunch.
lunch.